I'm so jazzed up, even though I spilt half my coffee today. Actually,
well,
I
it's
spilled
exciting because that means you still had half a coffee.
I think it would be more accurate to say I spilled 3/4 of my coffee on myself in my car. I went into work and then I turned around and I was like, I'm going home. I will be back in an hour. So I'm gonna make that time up. But guess what, Bruce?
What's that?
Next episode. It's gonna be the new year. This is the last episode of the year.
Winding it up.
2021. I almost made a joke about how this is the last episode of 2020. Huh? What? Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nope. Well. Let's get into it. Let's
do this. We got lots to cover.
Yeah. Here's our theme song. Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Spot, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. Happy soon-to-be New Year. Hope all of your December holidays have been festive and fun. Like we've said, this is our last episode of the year. So I wanted to look back on 2020 with a couple choice cards. I picked some, you picked some. That's about it. I don't think I picked any reprints because
I made an effort to not pick reprints, just because.
Yeah.
I mean,
there were already enough cards printed this year.
Yeah. Let's focus on the stuff that was printed this year. I mean, just because.
Yeah.
Take your pick. Any of the reprints this year that were ridiculous. Yeah. Let's just stick with the new stuff.
Yeah. By no means are these the best cards printed this year, and by no means are these the most efficient cards. I mean, we've said it 45, 46 times now.
Yeah.
And, well, I guess twice an episode, so almost 100 times.
Right. And Andy, by the way, by no means, it wasn't printed in 2021.
Oh,
I think that was last year or the year before. So
yeah, we each picked 3 cards that belong in the 99.
Yes.
And 3 legendary creatures to head our decks that were printed in the past year. The funny thing for me doing this research, quote unquote research, scrolling through lists of cards, I was like, oh, what about this one? Oh, nope, that was printed in 2020. Oh, what about this one? Nope, 2020.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that this year was unmemorable. I just think that there was a lot in a very short amount of time.
I think what I was seeing this year was overwhelmed with so many cards that none of the cards really got a lot of focus. I was impressed by the number of cards that I looked at today that I don't think I'd ever seen. That I either completely missed the preview for and didn't see it anywhere else. I wouldn't say that includes any of the top cards that I've got on my list, but there were plenty of cards that I thought were very interesting, or cards that were wonderful for specific decks.
Yeah.
So
for me, it was very interesting because it was a lot of cards that, I mean, you'd see the set symbol and be like, which one is this? Oh yeah, this is that. That came out this year. Oh my gosh.
Right.
The year started off with Kaldheim
back
in February, which feels like that. Like it feels in line with the rest of the 2020 line, because I think, I mean, like we said, there was so much that came out in 2021. Printed, both first printings and reprints, not including digital-only cards. In 2021, there were 3,438 cards printed.
Yeah.
Unique cards.
Right.
Which is a lot. So, I mean, it seems like we both ran with this idea of, let's go with first printings. So, let's see. Let's see if I can remember this off the top of my head. We started off with Kaldheim.
Yeah.
We had Strixhaven.
Yeah.
We had AFR, which is Forgotten Realms.
Yes.
Which took place of the core set. We had the 2 Innistrad sets. So we had 5 main sets, which is a lot. How did that happen?
Was M21 this year?
M21 was last year. It's like cars. It's like the next year.
Right.
It's so that
I mix up that one in the commander sets. So
I think it has something to do with the fact that like because it comes out during the summer, they want it throughout the standard of whatever year it says.
Right.
And I think in addition to those, we also had Modern Horizons 2. Jumpstart was reprinted. And then all of the commander decks. There was commander decks for each of the 5 sets, I believe.
Yes.
So
and then there was the full set of commander for Strixhaven. There were 5.
Right. So there are 5 for Strixhaven. There were 2 for the other ones, I think. 2 for Kaldheim, 2 for AFR. No, there were 4 for AFR.
Okay.
So there are 9, 10, 11, and then there were 2 for each of the Innistrad. So there were 15 commander decks that came out this year. Man. No wonder there were 3,500 cards printed.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's dawdle no longer. We have 12 cards to talk about. We normally talk about 8. Yeah, I mean, let's start off with the in the 99 cards. These are cards that piqued our interest throughout the year. We either got to play with or didn't. We get to plan to play with them, and hopefully they're sitting in our carts in TCG Player or whatever site we decide to use. Cool Stuff Inc., Card Kingdom, any of you, get at us.
There you
go. Let's see.
Let me start.
Please do. I'm rambling.
Paladin class.
Paladin class.
Love
that one.
An enchantment, subtype is class, and it costs 1 white. Spells your opponent's cast during your turn cost 1 more to cast. Now, generally speaking, that's enough for me. Mm-hmm. It's, obviously by itself would be a little underwhelming, but for 1 white, it's it starts you down the right path. Now, level 2, you pay 2 and a white to get to level 2. Creatures you control get +1/+1. We're just sort of continuing on the good stuff theme. Mm. And then level 3, it costs 4 and a white, and it says whenever you attack until the end of turn, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 for each other attacking creature and gains double strike.
Ooh-wee.
Gets nice and big, nice and fast. Now, I picked Paladin class because I like a lot of what it does. I like the whole set of class, all of the class.
The
cards.
Cycle, yeah.
I mean, sure, some of them are rather specific. And part of the reason I looked at this was I have looked at Bard class for my Buzzbark deck because it reduces costs by red green.
Oh yeah.
And, it does so many things that really work with that deck, and I think each of the classes do this. They're some of them are more generic, so that they would fit in more decks, but others are a lot more specific. I think Paladin class is a little bit more generic, but
it seems like it does the white thing, especially for like white weenies or
right. It's there to pump up your hundreds of token creatures so you can get them a little bit bigger, and then one of them gets freaking huge.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not going to go through and debate all of the benefits and the negatives and exactly how each of them works. They work, and I like the card. I like any card that has multiple abilities to it and does a lot of different things.
I think it belongs in any white deck that is creature based. If solely because like for 9 mana, on your turn spells cast, like you get all of them.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't have to pay it all at once. You pay it, as you can.
Yeah.
I really like the level up creatures. When I saw that they're doing it to enchantments, like
right.
They're harder to interact with. It's great. They set.
Everybody loves the installment plan.
Yeah. And I mean, even level 3 is great for just the double strike, honestly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to me, I look at this card and I'm going to put it in decks where the basic and the level 2 are what I'm looking for. Level 3, you have to pick your attacking creature when you declare combat. So it's not as though, hey, surprise, I can now add this benefit onto any creature. So your opponent knows which creature has this before they start doing blocks. So,
but at the same time, you know what it's going to be before you attack.
Well, exactly.
So you throw it onto the thing that has evasion.
Right.
And
It just means that one of your creatures is huge, and now they have to decide, are they going to block this thing? Are they going to let that through? Or are they going to chump? And they're going to have to make these same decisions the next turn, because at this point you've already paid for it, and after that everything's free. It's all gravy from there on in. But,
and for them to interact with it, especially at instant speed, it costs more.
More.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right,
Andy.
my first card is Keen Duelist. It's out of, I believe, one of the Strixhaven Precon decks. I think it might be out of the Brino one, the black and white. For 1 and a black, you get a 2/2. So it's a nice little bear with upside. Creature, human, wizard. At the beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library. You lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player. You each put the card you revealed into your hand. So it's like a nice, like, the name on point, fantastic. Because it's just basically at the beginning of your turn, the beginning of your upkeep, you each kind of just got, like, it's like a spaghetti western, like, quick draw, like,
right.
And you flip the card over. You each get the card, I think. Is that what it is at the end? Yeah. You each put the card revealed into your hand. So, you can either target somebody who needs the draw, or you can target somebody if you've got, a lot of high mana things. If you've somehow manipulated the top of your library so that you've got your high mana things up top, then great. You start doming the guy with you start doming your opponent that has the highest life total.
Right.
Granted, they get a card, and or maybe you do it to the person who is likely to have low mana value cards, because they're dealing you damage equal to their CMC, and vice versa. And it's like a great little card. I mean, you get card advantage. You get to hit some people. I love the flavor of the mechanic. Like, I hope they continue to do stuff like that. Like, it's
right.
It's not quite silver border like levels of interactivity,
right?
But it's like a little bit out of the ordinary.
Yeah, and I like a card like this because it encourages you to build decks with, like, big bomby stuff.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I appreciate mana curve is important, and you want to be able to play your cards, but I also want to be able to play the big cards. I want the big guys. And a lot of times, just everybody knowing that you have that in hand, that can for a lot of the super expensive stuff, that's fine. It works out well because they know what's coming. So if I see that my opponent flips over a removal spell or even mass removal, what's
now
coming.
Now
everybody's playing that little bit different because of the
dynamic,
this sub game, the dynamic that this card has created, and I like that.
Bruce, ready for number 2?
Yes.
You got a big number 2 coming for us?
I do. Hang on. Glorious Sunrise. Yeah. It's an enchantment. It costs 3 green and a green. It says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until the end of the turn. Target land gains tap, add green until the end of the turn, which is handy. Draw a card if you control a creature with the power 3 or greater. And option number 4, you gain 3 life. This is, it's not surprising that this and Paladin class are both in my top cards, just because I like the flexibility. I like the options that they provide. So a card like this, if I'm choosing one, well, if I'm going for a big swing, I choose the first one and give my creatures +1 in trample. If I'm still early on, still developing and looking to play out a big haymaker or multiple cards, I give target the ability to tap for 3. If I need card draw, I go that route. I guess if I'm about to lose, I gain 3 life.
Yeah.
It gives you the options. This is rarely ever bad in any deck that can run it.
Yeah. It feels very similar to like Elder Gargoth, where it's it attacks, you get a choice.
Right.
This is interesting because like modular enchantments are always nice because most of the time you don't have to choose right away. And the fact that this triggers at the beginning of combat, if you, for whatever reason, have it in like a Gruul extra combat step kind of deck,
right,
it triggers multiple times a turn. The +1/+1 stacks, or the, obviously you can't stack the second mode, but all else fails, you get 3 life.
Yeah.
I'm surprised this is 5 mana, honestly. It's green, so it's not going to be hard to get there, but for 3 green and green, I feel like it could have gotten away with like 2 green and green.
I think, to me, the trick with this card is you really do need it needs to be there for at least 2 turns, preferably 3.
Yeah.
I mean, any standard overrun effect is either 4 or 5.
Right.
And gives you +3 in trample. Whereas this one, it costs 1 more and is giving you less on that end. So there's a limit there, but if I can get it twice, then suddenly it's worth its cost. And then on top of that, there is the flexibility. If you play it before your combat, you pay 3 green, and then you can immediately follow it up with target land, add green.
Yeah, well, so you get it back.
So then you're getting at least 2 of that back.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Right. And that's if, you didn't play it on curve. And
exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I like the card. Again, there's obvious drawbacks, and you can look at it and see that, but I like the flexibility that it offers, that it can go pretty much everywhere. So
yeah. My next card, I feel like I've talked about on this podcast before. I'm trying to think of when I would have, but it's Mask of Grizzlebrand, also coming out of Innistrad. It's 1 black for legendary artifact equipment. It's got equip 3, and it says equipped creature has flying and lifelink. Whenever equipped creature dies, you may pay X life, where X is its power. If you do, draw X cards.
I came very close to picking this card.
I love it.
Yeah.
I obviously love it in Teysa because it triggers twice. But honestly, generally what you're kind of missing with like black life gainy decks is flying. Like general evasion. Obviously menace, you can still be blocked. And then obviously the lifelink is nice. It'll trigger regardless if it's blocked. And if you're putting it on something that is going to die, so for the card draw, it gives your opponent a moment to second guess whether they're going to block and kill it.
Right.
Because they know that you're going to get that card draw.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're gaining the life and then it dies. I mean, obviously, if somebody wipes the board, you're not going to be gaining the life before it dies. But generally speaking, if it dies in combat, it's going to be because it did damage, and then you get that life, and then you get to pay it to draw those cards.
Yeah.
It's nice that it's not you just draw 1, you draw X as well.
Yeah.
It also works extremely well with Double Strike. If you give something Double Strike, or you put it on something with Double Strike, it's a clean whistle. It's very nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Part of what I like about it is just the cost.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only 3 to cast. It's only 3 to equip. Now you're getting flying and lifelink off of this, along with and if they kill your creature, you also get a bonus.
Yeah. You're rarely obviously towards the end game, you may be rethinking this, but you're rarely going to be at such a low life total.
Yeah, where you're going to be concerned.
Where you're going to be like, oh no, I get to draw, 4 cards for 4 life.
Right.
Is essentially what it comes down to.
Yeah, and if the creature gets to go to combat, well, if you've got a 3/3 creature, it now has flying and lifelink. It goes to combat. It does 3 damage to the opponent, 3 damage to your opponent's creature.
Mm-hmm.
So you gain 3 life, and now it dies, and you lose that 3 life that you gained and draw 3 cards. Where's the loss?
Right, exactly.
You're net up 3 cards.
Yeah.
Well, you're net up 2 cards, and that's with a 3/3 creature. I'll take that.
Yeah.
And
generally, you know what you're throwing it into.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Right.
And that's without target removal or
sure.
board wipes. But
and I love the idea that if you swing into a green, an opponent playing green or an opponent playing black, sure, they throw their death touch creature in front of it, and your creature dies, and maybe they actually have some way to pump your creature up huge. I love the idea that somebody else would make your creature into a 12/12 or a 15/15.
So you have to think about...
Just so you have to draw all those cards.
Well, that's the thing, too, is that you don't have to pay the life.
Right. You can choose not to. And just
it's an amazing
let
thing.
it go. But I like the idea of the card. It really does bring back or reimagine Gristlebrand.
Oh, yeah.
In a very appropriate way. So.
I love this card. I immediately bought a playset and have it in 2 of my black decks.
Right.
All right. Let's start wrapping up our 99.
Okay, I'm a land junkie, so I've got to include a land.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to include the World Tree. World Tree, it was out of call time. It enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for 1 green, and it says as long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Now, it has another ability at the bottom. And if you spend double Wooburg, so white, blue, green, etc., and
black,
tap it,
red, green.
and then you have to sacrifice the World Tree, it lets you search your library for any number of God cards, put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. Okay, so if you're building a God theme deck, you really should have the World Tree in your deck. But if you're building a God deck, you already know that.
Right.
The key is, if you're building a deck that has 3 or more colors, you should probably have the World Tree in your deck.
Yeah.
You
have to have it in
green is
5.
one of the 3 colors.
You have to have it in 5 color deck anyway.
Well, yeah, because of the colored symbols. But the whole thing is, it isn't. Don't worry about whether you have gods and if you're going to sack this. How am I going to come up with the 10 mana plus still be able to sack the World Tree? The line is, as long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color.
And
so
you get perfect,
suddenly all of your lands now tap for any of the mana that you could need.
It's beautiful.
Forget about God decks. This is an auto include in every 5 color deck.
Yeah.
I appreciate that this doesn't kick in until you control 6 or more lands, but as someone who always plays Temple of the False God, which has to be your 5th land.
Right.
I can tell you right now, if you're playing the World Tree, you're going to be just fine. And on top of that, the World Tree taps for mana when you only have 1 land out there. So you would not put it in.
Yeah, you would not be upset if this was your first land.
Ideally, I would prefer it to be early on because it enters the battlefield tapped. So on my first turn, when I might not even have a play, that's the best time to be playing enter the battlefield tapped lands. So, yeah. I really like the World Tree.
It's arguably better than Chromatic Lantern, which then also fixes all of your mana forever, because it's a land, and people don't target lands. They just don't. Yeah.
And honestly, everyone can look at your commander, and they're going to see a 5-color commander, and think about it for a second and be like, is he really playing gods? Well, by the time you get close to having your 6th mana or your 6th land out, they're going to know if you're running a god deck or not. Mm-hmm. Even if you've tried to hide it with a different commander that has no relevance to the type. They're going to know at this point and then make their decisions on how they want to treat the World Tree at that point. But and I will say for opponents, with your strip mines and wastelands and ghost quarters, I appreciate we want to let everybody play. You want them to be able to cast their spells. the World Tree is a land you might want to seriously consider getting rid of. It's just going to enable everything that fast.
So. Oh, absolutely. And I think, too, especially where it comes from the same set as Maskwood Nexus.
Yeah.
Where it's 4-mana artifact. Creatures you control are every creature type. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield.
Right.
So, if you see that come down with the World Tree, maybe immediately panic. Because soon they will have enough to take every single creature out of their deck and put it onto the battlefield.
Yeah.
And that isn't casting. So, careful. It is a sweet card that, I think I would definitely... I don't think it's necessarily a remove on site land, but it is definitely a thing to keep an eye on if you have things like Strip Mine or...
You want to be aware.
Field of Ruin.
You want to be aware.
So my last...
Okay.
In the 99 card... I had 2 black. Now I'm going to have a red card.
Okay.
It's Crackle with Power because I want it so bad. So it costs XXX, red. So 3 X's and red.
Oh boy.
Red. 2 red. It's a sorcery. Crackle with Power deals 5 times X damage to up to X targets. You pay 5 mana. You get to hit 1 creature for 5. Or 1 target. 1 target for 5 damage.
Right.
You bump that up to X is 2, so 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. It's 8 mana for 2 for 10. Right? No. Yeah. 10 damage to 2 targets.
Yeah.
And then 3, so 3, 3, 3, and 2, so it's 11. So 11 mana, which isn't unheard of in late game Magic, or especially late game Commander. You get to do 15 damage to 3 targets, also known as your opponent's faces.
Yeah.
You do 15 out of nowhere at sorcery speed, of course, but you can see how this card can easily end the game.
Yeah.
It has a weird curve to it, but as long as you tap correctly, you should be okay. I'm surprised that this doesn't have the Banefire clause of this. If X is more than whatever, it can't be countered. But because I think Banefire is X and red, you do X damage to single target. If X is greater than 5, it can't be countered.
Right.
So I'm surprised if X isn't 3 or more, it can't be countered. But I'm surprised that's not the case.
Right.
I'm surprised there's not another line of text on this card.
Yeah.
Just to make it a little bit easier and less risky. But I'm going to throw it to break real quick because we're done with our 99. When we come back, we'll talk about our favorite commanders printed this year, or favorite legendary creatures. We'll talk about that when we get back. We'll be right back.
This episode of Temple of Falspot is brought to you by Blex, Vexing Pest. Blex, Vexing Pest. Blex, Vexing Pest.
Blex, Vexing Pest.
Blex, Vexing Pest.
Blex, Vexing Pest.
And now back to you.
All right, we're back. Thank you to our sponsor, Vex. Vexing Pest.
Yes.
Anyway, we each have 3 legendary creatures printed at some point in the past 12 months. So let's talk about them. I'll go first.
All right.
My very first one is... I've talked about this on Twitter a bit. Honestly, maybe my favorite card printed this year. Ooh. It's Fane, the Broker. For 2 and a black. I believe he came from also the Brina Precon. For 2 and a black, he's a legendary creature, human warlock. He's got 4 abilities. He's a 3/3.
He's a guy.
Yeah, he's a 3/3. Tap, sacrifice creature. You can put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature.
Nice.
Or tap, remove a counter from a creature you control. Create a treasure token. Tap, sacrifice an artifact. Create a 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. Or for 3 and a black, untap Feign the Broker. I just like I love the like chain of effects. Obviously, like if you're gonna do it in real time, it's gonna take like rounds and rounds.
Yeah.
Generally, you're gonna do this to make treasures or make your creatures bigger. The last part, a 3/2 flyer is fine, but you're putting so much effort into getting it that it's a weird payoff, but it can loop back around to putting +1/+1 counters on creatures. It's just a nice little cycle of lines of text.
Right.
3 and a black to untap them is expensive, but if you have ways, other ways to untap them, great. But I've got him in my Kirk deck, where he is mostly just around to put +1/+1 counters on things.
Right. Well, I mean, I look at Feign and I say to myself, okay, for 3 and a black, I can tap Feign and create a 2/1 white and black inkling token. Because you can tap it to get the treasure and then spend the 4 to untap it to then get the creature. No, yeah, I understand. You need the token, but in other words, you can mix and match any 2 of these abilities, and it essentially costs 4, and that's what you can get in a turn. So then it's up to you to decide: is it worth spending the 4 to untap him to get the other ability? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Yeah,
but it's certainly, it's something to think about, and I'm sure there are times when you'll be happy to spend 4 mana to get a flyer that can block.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it in Kirk is that you're getting counters already. The commander himself gives like +1/+1 counters when you pay or when you play black spells. Right. So if you have ways to continually generate these +1/+1 counters, regardless of if it's in this deck or if you have Feign as the commander, you're essentially you're end of turning some treasures. Like you're getting some treasures for the +1/+1 counters, and like to get treasures from that feels like cheating.
Right.
Like it's so easy to just get a little bit more mana here and there.
And he also just says remove a counter.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a +1/+1 counter. There are plenty of ways that black has that ends up putting -1/-1 counters on creatures. I can't remember. Is it persist that brings them back with a -1/-1?
I think so.
Or is it a +1/+1? I mix the 2 of them up all the time, but our audience knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So when it comes back onto the battlefield, it comes with a -1/-1 counter. Well, Feign is happy to turn that -1/-1 counter into a treasure, and now your creature can once again die and come back with another counter.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So there's all sorts of ways to abuse what Feign can do.
Or even, I mean, we were talking about in our White Enchantments episode the other day or a couple weeks back, where it was something that like gives like it gives like the attacking creature some sort of like wall counter. I don't remember. I think it was gold
defender
counters.
Counter.
Yeah, it was gold counters and everything
as take it off.
Gold counters has defender. So it's like you can just take those off. Like whatever is holding your creatures back.
Yeah.
They don't have to be the +1/+1 counters.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, holding your creature back. Well, I mean, bribery counters.
Right.
There's all sorts of things that can get put on your creatures that you can then remove. There's all sorts of ways to have fun with this.
Works well with like the Ozolith as well, where if you have like redundant counters, you can take one of them off. If you have a flying counter on a flying creature, you can take it off for a treasure. It's amazing.
Yeah. Something else I like with commanders, this commander provides you with a sack outlet. Sack the creature. You don't have to sack the creature to get the +1/+1 counters. You can be sacking the creature because it's going to die anyway. Oh, and by the way, bonus, you get a couple of +1/+1 counters on a target creature. Well, you always have a target creature because Fane is there.
Oh, yeah.
So he can target himself. So you can make him bigger if you want. Now, I understand you want to tap him to get all the abilities. You're not necessarily looking to swing in with him. But,
well, even if he's
however you want to use it.
Even if he's eating up all these creatures to put +1/+1 counters on him, he's a 3/3 for 3. Like, that's a pretty solid stat line.
Yeah, it is.
Especially for Commander.
Right.
So you throw like something like the Fire Shrieker on him and you give him double striking.
Sure.
He's a threat for Commander damage.
And in theory, for 3 and a black, he has Vigilance.
Yeah.
If you want to go that
yeah,
route.
you don't have to untap him for these things.
Right.
And that's a great other point too, is that if he's tapped for somebody's combat and they attack you, not remembering. I mean, obviously you don't want to rely on them forgetting.
Yeah.
But
it's like surprise, my commander can now jump out and block.
Yeah.
Maybe not the ideal way to do this, but it can also be surprise. That creature that you're blocking that was going to die, now I blocked it, and now I'm going to sack it and give one of my other creatures 2 +1/+1 counters.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of benefits to this, and there's no one big huge moment, but honestly, I want my commander to be effective all the way through, and I think Fane does that.
I love him so much. It's all downhill from here for me.
All right, well. Then let me jump in. I too am going to follow. I'm going to follow with another black legendary creature, Gisa, Glorious Resurrector, from Midnight Hunt. She costs 2 black and a black for a 4/4 creature. So we're sticking with the mana for 4 X mana for an XX creature. Legendary creature, Human Wizard. It reads: if a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. Now, that is basically a big reason why this card's in the deck, or why I chose this one. Cards that mess with opponents' graveyards, they're format warping. I've seen this again and again, and more decks are relying heavily on the ability to recur cards out of their graveyards, and this commander just says no. So the first line is: if a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. Now, I've seen other cards do this, and they are format warping.
Right, like Kalidas.
The difficulty is, and while I love a format warping card,
Classic Bruce.
It blocks too many of the cards. There are too many times when Kalidas has hit the battlefield for me, because I have a Kalidas deck, where my opponents are now like, okay, I gotta wait until I find a way to kill Kalidas to do anything, because I've just neutered their deck. And when I see that line on Gisa, I get worried. However, you follow it up with the next part. Said, at the beginning of your upkeep, put all creature cards exiled with Gisa, Glorious Resurrector, onto the battlefield under your control. They gain Decayed, which means a creature with Decayed can't block. When it attacks, sack it at the end of combat. It means that eventually, most of these cards are going to come back to your opponent's graveyards, if you're planning to swing with them. Now, if you just want to stop them from messing around, well, then the card goes, it's exiled. At the beginning of my upkeep, you put those cards onto the battlefield under my control.
You get all of those ETBs.
All those ETBs. That's the big part. But just don't attack.
Yeah.
Don't attack. Because the Decayed token sits there, and it only comes off when you swing, right?
It dies when you swing, or, I mean, obviously, board wipes.
Right, and it can't block.
It can't block, so you're not going to be using it to... Yeah.
Right, so it's a creature. It has an enter the battlefield trigger. You get that. And then as long as if you want to make sure your opponent never gets it, just push it off to the side. It's now an enchantment, or it's a creature that's just going to sit there and do nothing because you don't want your opponents to have it.
Right.
Now, having said that, when was the last time you played a creature in Commander that didn't have an enter the battlefield trigger?
Yeah.
Almost every single creature has some kind of enter the battlefield trigger. Or you at least just want them gone. You don't want your opponent to get to play it again. So once it hits the graveyard, you don't want it coming back again and again. And Gisa can stop that. However, you also have that opportunity to open it up. This is not a forever moment. This is not Kalidas, which just completely locks people out. All this card is doing is discouraging your opponents from letting their creatures go to the graveyard. However, they just got to get rid of Gisa. They just have to get rid of, and not even that, you can be the one doing it because you have the option to swing. I mean, if they've given you a massive creature, then you're going to swing. I mean, it doesn't just have to sit there forever. You can wipe the board, and those cards will all end up back in your graveyard. So
yeah, I find it interesting because it doesn't have a clause about what happens to your creatures, which I mean obviously would end up breaking this card in half.
Yeah, well that's why it's if a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it.
And obviously it gets weird with things like the Nutristani from the War of the Spark era, where it's like at the beginning of your turn or at the end of your turn. I don't remember. It's one of those. Every player gains control of the creatures they own. So like it gets weird there, or like Homeward Path. But even if that happens, very niche scenario, corner case, if you will, they still have Decayed.
Right. So if you know that it's going to go back to your opponent, just swing.
Well, or
put it back in their graveyard.
Or if they swing with it and it has Decayed, it's going to die. They control it. It's going to come back to you.
Yeah.
So, not all that bad.
No.
I mean, as a mono black commander, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love this card.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of Liesa or whatever from what's that?
I think it's just Lisa, isn't it?
Yeah. From that was Midnight Hunt. Basically she's a flying lifelink angel 4/5. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile instead. So it's interesting that these come from budding sets, they both come from Midnight Hunt. And they have this clause of your opponent's creatures get exiled. And if the thing is with Gisa is that if she leaves the battlefield before your upkeep happens, those things don't come onto the battlefield. They stay exiled. Granted, I think if you put her out again and it comes back around, it would trigger then and you'd get even more this time.
Yeah.
Which is pretty neat.
What's your next card?
Number two. My number two and number two. My next card is Lelia. Lelia the Blade Reforged. 2 and a red. I like these 3-mana commanders. For a 2/2 with haste. Legendary creature, Spirit Warrior. She's Ghost. Whenever Lelia the Blade Reforged attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Whenever one or more cards are put into exile from your library and or your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Lelia. There we go.
All right.
So this works really well in the 99 with Prosper. Just putting that out there. Prosper says you get bonuses for playing things out of exile. Anyway.
Yeah.
As a commander, it's nice to see a 2/2 for 3 with haste.
Right, and essentially it's a 3/3.
Right, because you're immediately triggering it. As soon as she attacks, you're triggering it. It gets 1 bigger. And you get the impulsive card draw as well.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And, it works really well with, you're never going to be worried about getting Bajuka bogged because she's just going to blow up.
It works really well with any card that gives you multiple combat steps. Because then you're exiling more than one card at a time. And in theory, if you swing once and it becomes a 3/3 and you've exiled a card, and then you get to swing again on the same turn, then it becomes a 4/4, and you've thrown another card into or you've put another card into exile. So it works very well that way.
Yeah. And I mean, red is the color of impulsive card draw. You've got, obviously Act on Impulse, the namesake. But even like newer cards like Bergi, the new Chandra, like, I mean, most Chandras have some sort of impulsive card draw attached to it. You're going to be churning through your deck, throwing it all into exile just to play the best cards and making Leia that much bigger and better. Because the great thing about these impulsive card draw is that you play it from exile. So like you're putting it into exile, getting the +1/+1, and then if you end up playing it, it goes to your graveyard. Or battlefield or whatever it is. I keep thinking that it's like, whenever you exile a non-land card, but like this works on land as well, and it's beautiful, it's amazing. It's a great card. And she says you can play that card, so you can play a land from exile.
Right.
Generally you want to play your land first main phase, play your spells second main phase, but like,
right,
you're going to have that chance of hitting a land.
So and the joy is that there's a ton of red cards that do this. I mean, you can look at, half of the Chandras. Yeah. End up exiling a card that let you play it.
Right.
And as you said, a number of the new cards do it. And, you can scroll through this fairly quickly and spot all kinds of ways to do this. So, no, I love the card.
Yeah. What's your second one?
I got this great card, Andy. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. I don't know if our audience have ever heard of it.
The Temple of False God?
No, it's Liesa, Forgotten Archangel.
Oh my God.
I was laughing as you were talking about it because I knew it was my next card up.
I honestly thought it was printed last year. Maybe because I got confused because she had a card in Commander Legends as well.
She did. So Liesa, Forgotten Archangel is 2 white, black. It's a legendary creature angel. She has flying and lifelink. And as Andy's already said, whenever another non-token creature you control dies, return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. Again, this is this is where we're falling into Kalidas territory again with this card. But what I like is that you get the benefit.
Right.
So you're getting the bonus on this end. I enjoy this card. And honestly, for 5 mana, I look at it and say that, okay, this is this isn't a commander. This isn't a creature. This is an enchantment. Mm-hmm. You're going to play it out once, and there's a very good chance you're not going to get to play it again when they remove it, because now you're talking 7 mana. So I look at it as a slowdown on my opponent's on any of my opponent's recursion strategies.
Yeah,
you're not cutting it off because the card costs 5. As soon as they get rid of it once, now you're paying 7. I might pay 7. Am I going to pay 9? Almost definitely not. So I look at this as a great, a great slowdown.
Yeah.
But this is not a build around card, which is a little different from what I normally do. I normally really focus around the
build around commanders.
Yeah, around the build arounds. But I just really like the idea of it's like, here, I'm putting a significant speed bump in front of my opponents.
Right.
And I am relying completely on my 99 of white and black to win this game for me.
Yeah. It does 3 things for me, in my eyes. The first thing is that it deters them from board wipes, period.
Right.
Because she still triggers if she dies in a board wipe. So like all of your creatures except for her come back to your hand. She dies and goes probably back to the command zone. Jeez. So it deters from board wipes, or it requires your opponent to play 2 cards. One, targeted removal to kill Liesa, and then the second to wipe everything.
Right.
And then the third thing is that it protects everything from your board wipes, and it's beautiful. I love this card. I wonder how much field bads there are with this card.
There's going to be a few. There's definitely going to be a few, but like I said, this is not something I expect to play, and I'm going to fight real hard to keep on the battlefield.
Right. Getting it out is enough.
I'm playing it for speed bump purposes and not much else.
You know when you're going to get it in.
Right.
My last card is the one deck that I never got around to making. I saw this card during the summer, and I was like, man, I just want to make this deck, and I never did. It's Delina, Wild Mage. For 3 and a red, you get a 3/2 legendary creature, Elf Shaman. Whenever Delina Wild Mage attacks, choose target creature you control, then roll a d20. 1-14, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it has exile this creature at the end of combat. 15 through 20. Yeah, you got pretty good chances there. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's 6 out of 20.
Yeah.
You got 1/3 of a chance to 1 out of 3 to get this. Create one of those tokens, period. You may roll again, period. This had a day 1 errata. It used to say roll again. But it goes infinite without really any stake with something else. I don't remember. It's some blue creature that you roll 2.
Yeah.
And you continue to... And the odds are that become infinitesimally small that you will ever not roll above 15, or you will not roll under 15. But, as a mono red deck, you get all of the big red creatures, especially the legendary creatures, have fantastic effects. Ilharg, granted, these things are already attacking, so you don't get the attack trigger, but you've got that. You get a little unlegendary one, a 6/6 with trample. You've got all these red creatures that do these amazing things. I have this in a historic brawl deck on Arena where I continue to just put out what's the Terror of the Peaks.
Yeah.
So it's whenever a creature comes into play, you deal damage to a target equal to its power or something. So if you continue to get 15 or higher with this, you just keep creating more and more, and then they trigger off of each other, and it's amazing. It's a big kaboom.
And you know what I like about this card?
A lot of things.
There's a number of things. First off,
rolling dice.
Rolling dice. Mm-hmm. Always great. I'm a big fan of rolling dice. Anybody who's seen me play Buzzbark knows this. Number 2, her power is 3.
Oh, yeah.
That works in my Grenzo deck. So I think I just found another card to go into Grenzo because, hey, more tokens, more attacking, and it's it's just a funky card that does different stuff, and I love the idea. And there's it's not like it's there's some sort of cast trigger thing that I need to worry about. So
yeah, just kind of give her haste.
Yeah. So Delina Wild Mage sounds great. We got 1 card left.
1 card left of the year.
Yeah. It's a card my friend John actually likes quite a bit.
I know. He just got so excited sitting there.
Coma, Cosmos Serpent.
I thought you were going to say Polo.
No.
Same colors.
She'll be in the deck.
There we go. For 3 green, blue. It's Como, Cosmos Serpent. It's a legendary creature serpent. This spell can't be countered. At the beginning of each upkeep, that's each upkeep, not your upkeep, Create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Coma's Coil. Sacrifice another serpent. Choose one. You tap target permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated this turn. Or Coma Cosmos Serpent gains indestructible until end of turn. Now, we've played against this a number of times with my friend John, who happens to have just walked into the room. So this thing is practically unkillable if you let 2, maybe 3 tokens worth get out onto the battlefield. Mm-hmm. But in spite of that, this is a blast to play. It's a blast to play against. I had a good time playing against this, trying to figure out how to manage this and make this work.
Especially you essentially team up with your 2 other opponents at this point. I've played against this on Arena, and it's miserable. But one-on-one Commander is not what I play Commander for.
Right. So no, and that's sort of the benefit of this one. I like the card. I think it does a lot of the things that I like to do, meaning make tokens, and the idea that you can stopping opponents' creatures' activated abilities is it's something that I don't do very often, and you don't realize how strong that is until you start running cards like this and doing and countering those abilities. They're all over the place. So yeah, it's a fun card. Oh yeah, and it's a 6/6, so later beats. So I think all about it.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about Coma is that because you are getting so many tokens, you sack one to somebody's kill spell, and then they surprisingly have another, so you sack another one. That's it. That's all you have to do. It's just it's miserable, but it's great.
The difficulty is that if I as a player can get rid of force John, I'm going to say John because John was the one I played against. If I can force John to get rid of one of the tokens, then in essence I have done almost nothing because he's going to get another one on the next upkeep. So in essence, each player has to get rid of 2 of these tokens if you want to gain any ground at all.
Yeah,
and trying to get rid of 2 at a time, 2 of them is tough unless
Yeah, I mean, you essentially
you're looking at mass removal, and then you still need to get rid of Coma again.
Yeah,
because it's now indestructible.
Either Cyclonic Rift or Exiling are really the answers to this.
Yeah, basically.
Or just player removal is always a choice.
If you can get through the 6/6 and all those 3/3 tokens, then yeah, player removal is a great option.
Definitely.
So, all right.
I think that's going to wrap it up for us this year. Happy 2021, everyone. I hope you all have a great 2022. I know we'll be sticking around. So we'll see you on the other side. John, you want to say anything?
Adios. Vaya con Dios.
All right.
Here we go.
Have a great night. We're going to go play some Magic. John's rearing to go. So let's go do that. Have a great night, everyone. We're the Temple of Falspod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
I'm John.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for hanging out. Have a great night. Your 5th land be the Temple. Bye! Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter at falsepodmtg. Bruce is at Manaburned, and I'm at Andy Weekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the Temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!